Welcome YouTube family, and today we're going to talk about a very important topic that most of you guys are familiar with, and that's debt collectors. The reason we're talking about this today is actually quite interesting because when I first started my business in terms of credit repair and helping individuals restore their credit, so certain things happened, right? Like I came across a lot of different experiences, my knowledge, I learned through those experiences on what are some of the best ways to handle situations and what are some of the possible worst ways that you can handle situation. So today's topic is quite relevant to our ongoing discussion of hopefully helping you in your financial journey. And we're going to talk about the collection agencies. Okay, the reason why we're talking about collection agencies is very simple. A lot of individuals that I know on a personal level have suffered dramatically because of the way that these debt collectors are doing devious things, right? They're selling debt from one company to another, and it's just a never-ending vicious cycle. And that's what it's a very dangerous position to be in, especially when you're trying to, fix your credit, especially when you're trying to rise up the ladder of building your wealth. And I think it's unfair that a lot of individuals have to go through that process. So today, we're going to discuss on how to fix this. Now, there are a couple of steps that we're going to go through in terms of helping you fix your credit with debt collectors. This particular topic hasn't been discussed a lot on some of the videos that I've looked through and some of the channels that I'm going through. And unfortunately, I think that people are kind of missing the point. People are missing the concept of how to realistically deal with debt collectors and what are some of the best ways that you can possibly initiate in order to kind of get rid of those guys, right? So we're going to talk about a few steps, right? The step number one is the obvious step, and most of you guys are already familiar with this step, and it's the FDCPA. Okay, and I'm going to explain why this is important. Now, the first thing you want to understand is the FDCPA is essentially abbreviation for Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, right? And the reason why this is critical is because the FDCPA allows you, the customer, to ask a question, whoever's collecting the debt or the alleged debt, and ask them, hey, look, you're telling me that I owe this alleged debt, right? You're sending me a letter. You're saying that I owe this debt. Now, before I actually agree to, let alone the amount that you're saying I owe you or the alleged debt, let me ask you a couple of questions. And during that process, what you're going to ask for is very simple. You're going to ask for validation. Now, that's where the debt validation letter comes in, but I'm going to add a little twist to it. Alito Rafter's version of it, right? What you're going to ask for is relationship documents. Most of you are going to wonder, well, isn't this the same as asking for a contract, signed agreement with your name on it and everything like that? Not really. A relationship document, when it comes to a debt collector, is not about your signed agreement with the debt collector. It's a question of the debt collector's signed agreement with the original creditor. And the way you're going to ask for that is, hey, look, I want you to validate this debt. I want you to make sure that you include every information that I can ensure that this is an alleged debt that is actually valid. And number one, it has legal standing to even for you to come after me. But the second thing I want you to do is I want you to give me your relationship documents with this so-called creditor that you say I owe. All right? And you have to include it in your letter that a statement is not enough. Anybody can make a statement. You have to demonstrate through compliance and validation those relationship documents. You have to show me that this relationship is actually existent, and then it gives you legal grounds to even go after me to collect this alleged debt you're saying I owe. All right? So that leads us to step number two. In most cases, by the way, when you ask these type of questions, the debt collector is not going to come back with an answer. And if they do, they're going to say, here's a statement, the debt is actually valid. It doesn't mean anything. You're going to have to show me some relationship documents, right? And I give you an example of that. What you can ask for during a relationship document, you can say, look, I want your relationship document to demonstrate something called the quitclaim language. Okay? I want your relationship document to contain something called the quitclaim language. The reason why we're asking for this is because the quitclaim language essentially gives the 100% disclosure legally of what the debt actually is, right? And what I mean by that is, in the quitclaim language, they usually say, we as the creditor, original creditor, handing this debt off to you as the collection agency, do not certify this debt to be 100% accurate. Usually, and it's highlighted somewhere, and it's one of these clauses. And when that happens, the information on the FDCPA requires that whenever somebody's going after something, it has to be 100% accurate. But if the quitclaim language in the relationship documents don't necessarily give you that validity, it doesn't explain in simple terms that this debt is 100% accurate, which in fact it isn't, because in the quitclaim language it's a written off debt. Therefore, the status of the debt is really zero. It's being recreated through the collection agency to have a legal standing. But the only time that it actually has a legal standing is if somebody, when these collectors are actually sending you a letter and you start making your first few payments out of fear, they can take you to court and say, well, a payment constitutes an agreement, right? Because you're agreed to pay. Why would you pay if you didn't feel guilty or you didn't feel obliged to it? Clearly, you know who this debt is. And of course, you know who it is because it's coming from an original creditor. So be careful with this. When you ask for debt validation, you have to ask for relationship documents and you have to ask to verify the quitclaim language. Because if you don't do this, okay, if this essential step is so scary for a lot of debt collectors, when you ask them for quitclaim language, relationship documents with the original creditor, accuracy of the debt itself, it's going to be a very scary process for a debt collector. They'll know, you'll know what you're talking about. And in most cases, they'll send you a letter back which goes something like this. Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, at this point, we're ceasing activities because we don't feel it's good. If you have any questions, we're going to also contact the 3 credit reporting agency. I'll let them know to take this off. It should be in the next few days. They'll contact you. If you have any questions, contact me and blah, 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 right? Typically, that's basically a cease collection activity letter. It means that this debt is no longer going to be, turned over or, let's say, pursued after. And that's a good sign. But sometimes what ends up happening is they'll just give you a statement and bluntly ignore your letter, which you kind of have to go after them, because at that point it's adversely affecting your credit, and that's actually injurious to your character, which is a violation of the FCRA. So that's the step number 2, right? Step number 2 is the FCRA. You guys are very familiar with this. This is a short abbreviation for Fair Credit Reporting Act. Now the reason why this is critical is because the FCRA, okay, there's a bunch of case laws, which is, courts have precedents. It's, the judge has decided a certain way, and other judges use this thing called precedents. It's actually, the decisions of other courts. To respect that decision, this judge will essentially follow that ruling, right? So there's a lot of case laws with precedents that happen where the FDCPA, when you send a debt validation letter, if they're reporting on your credit report during that process, and typically what you want to have is a credit monitoring software, right? You want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on this, because this violation alone could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? But during that process where you send a debt validation letter, right, you have that 30 to 45 days before the debt collector can get back to you or give a BS statement or something like that. During that time, what you want to make sure and to keep a close eye on is if the debt collector has one of 2 things in your credit report. Number 1, they're not there anymore, which is the right thing to do, because if they're reporting, and we discussed the case law, if they're reporting during the debt validation period, it's a violation of the FCRA, because the debt itself is not accurate and compliant. It's not true. It's injurious to your character. It's false misrepresentation. It's subterfuge, and therefore it's a lie. So because it hasn't been validated, they cannot report. And the case and the courts have decided that during that time where your debt validation is happening, reporting on a credit bureau is considered a collection activity. And basically, it contradicts the FDCPA. It means that they're violating the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So you cannot collect until a debt is 100% verified and validated. And that is a process that a lot of people don't comprehend and don't understand and don't respect. And I think that one of the biggest things that is really game changer for you to deal with debt collectors is essentially understanding this very process. So we're going to go over it one more time, okay? The first step is you want to follow the FDCPA. You want to ask for debt validation. During the debt validation process, what you're going to be asking, okay, is what are, first of all, I want you to validate this debt. Number 2, I want you to give me the relationship documents that has the quitclaim language describing this alleged debt's valid status. I don't want no statements because it doesn't do the job for me. I want to make sure that you're saying who you say you are and you actually have legal grounds to collect this alleged debt from me. Alleged, you have to use that word. And by the way, disclosure, I'm not an attorney or anything like that. I'm just giving you guys information to help you in pursuing your credit goals, right? So don't forget that. So one more time, during the debt validation process, you have to ask the collection agency, first of all, I want you to validate this debt. I want you to include with that validation your relationship documents with the original creditor, which should and 100% include the quitclaim language that demonstrates the legal status of this debt, of this alleged debt, and of course, whether or not if you actually have the right to collect. And during that process, hopefully you have a credit monitoring tool. You're keeping an eye on your credit reports, because if during that debt validation process, and hopefully you've sent certified mail, and if you did send certified mail, it means that you're keeping an eye out on when the time they actually receive that letter. Once they receive that letter, they have 30 to 45 days to send you a confirmation of whatever this debt is. And if during that process they're reporting, it's violating the FCRA because it's inaccurate information, but it's also violating the FDCPA because a report, when you're reporting during a validation process, it's still the same thing as a collection activity, like giving you a phone call. It's a different type of communication. And the reason it's like that is because the courts and some of the judges have decided that that is actually the case, right? So make sure you include this step. And the second thing you want to do is you want to tackle that on the FCRA side. And the reason why you want to contact the 3 credit reporting agency and say, look, at this time I've sent this debt validation letter, here's a copy of it, here's what I'm requesting from them. And because of the fact that it's still not being validated and it has no legal standing, or if they did, why would I even challenge or question it or even dispute it? I want you to take care of this, because I don't believe they'll respect what I'm asking them to do. And based on certain case laws, I have the right to request this because of the same. The report on my bureaus, on my information, is considered a collection activity. And collection activity cannot be pursued on until such point this debt is actually verified or validated, right? So follow these 2 steps, okay? That's the thing you want to do. And let's say they're playing hardball, right? Let's say they're playing hardball and they're saying, look, we don't care. You owe us money, pay up, okay? You owe us money, pay up, or we'll take you to court. And most of the times what ends up happening is they're bluffing, because clearly they cannot demonstrate the validity of this debt, so you still have nothing to worry about. But let's say all hell breaks loose, and what you want to do is you want to say, well, if that's the case, let me check something. And this is on you. You got to do your own research. You go up on Google, you go to the Secretary of State website, and you look at this collection agency. See if they're actually registered in your state. And if they are, what's the status of their company? Are they dissolved? Are they active? Are they under another ownership? Et cetera, et cetera. And that's the first step. The second step is, are they even licensed to collect in your state? If not, or if they are, what you can do is, okay, if you're saying I owe you this, whatever, I don't believe that's accurate, because clearly you couldn't verify. But I'm curious, are you even licensed to collect in my state? If you are, then can you show me demonstration of your licensing papers, the actual accurate information that gives you the right to pursue this business activity as a debt collector? So you're asking them more questions. But at this time, what you're going to do is you're going to take it a step further. What you're going to do is you're going to contact the CFPB. Okay? And with the CFPB, what you're going to do is you're going to complain about all the evidence, because clearly you have credit monitoring. So you know, like, hey, look, they violated the FDCPA. Here's what's happening. Here I asked for relationship documents and quitclaim language. They failed to give me that. And in addition to that, because of certain case laws, they reported, which is illegal, right? And they violated the FCRA. And I asked them, look, you haven't submitted anything, and they're not complying. They're clearly misrepresenting my my information and themselves, and it's injurious to my credit. In addition, when I asked for their documents to prove that they actually allowed to collect in my state, business registration papers and licensing papers, they failed to give that. All this information should be included in your CFPB complaint, right? Make it huge. Make it so much so that it's a very scary thing for them to even consider pulling up your file again on their computers, or let alone passing that debt on to another debt buyer, because it's going to be a pain in the neck for them to even get to the point where they're going to have to go through this all over again, okay? So that's a very thorough process of dealing with one debt collector. Most of you guys will just send a dispute letter, all that stuff, debt validation, whatever. It works, some of the times it's okay. But some of the times they're also very persistent. Some of the times they're going to be a little bit difficult to deal with. And then during those times, okay, you have to be very thorough. It's better to be thorough than not to be thorough. Why take a chance on some of those times? Because you can't buy time, my friends. Time is very limited. Okay, if you're aiming to establish a certain threshold for credit to build a certain level of wealth, okay, you don't have time in your hands. You can't buy that. Anything else you can buy in the world but time, you cannot buy, right? So it's better to do it right the first time around, right? So be very thorough, follow this entire step, and you'll get success. If you do it the right step, you just be persistent. Just, file with the CFPB. If they don't respond, and if they're not, just file with the State Attorney General's office and with their State Attorney General's office and, with the association that handles debt collectors, and just keep going. BBB, make them busy. Because if they're busy trying to communicate with you and they're not doing their business and collecting money from other people who are just falling for their tricks, they're going to run out of business. Okay, so it's too much of a business activity for them to pursue you. But at least you'll have evidence stacked. If ever you find a pro bono lawyer who works on contingency, etc., you'll have the evidence that you need to successfully pursue them as well. Okay, so with that said, my friends, I hope you found this video helpful. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, subscribe, turn that bell icon on, so every time there's a brand new video like this, you'll be first to be notified. Subscribe to my newsletter. I'll give you more insights and information about credit, personal wealth, and building your financial future. Okay, as well as leave a comment below this video. Tell me something interesting that you learned today. Tell me some of the things that you haven't discovered before. What sparks your curiosity? What are some of the questions that you have for me? Right? So go ahead and ask me below this video. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe, turn that bell icon on. And with that said and done, my friends, I will see you next time. I'll lead to after your guided mentor. Bye for now.